I've never really felt ashamed or needing to hide my mental health state from people, except when I was doing my general practice work, when I often felt pretty bleak. I mean, the feelings were awful, and massive anxiety. I mean, and agitation like I'd never experienced before, because you get all the anxiety that you normally have in a month. It just comes in one sort of biochemical wallop, and then you feel exhausted. I mean, sort of panic attack type thing, really. It's sort of automatic nervous system absolutely on overdrive. And most recently, it was 2 or 3 years ago, my mother and my brother died in the same year. And that left me feeling pretty, I was the only child after that, left me feeling very exposed, and I could feel myself starting to get depressed again. Share it with other people who you trust, which is the other point about sheds, really. But it doesn't have to just be about the tools. It's about the conversation that we can all have whilst we're using the tools and whilst we are together in the same space. And as we get to know each other better, we're not just mending and making things, physically. We're also helping to make and mend ourselves. And that for me is the message. If you put people in the right context where they feel they can trust the people they're talking to or working with, all sorts of wonderful things start happening. Anxiety levels start dropping. Things like being in closed spaces or our natural fears that we already have will start to find a space because they're being grounded. Instead of building up like a great big sort of lightning cloud above a church steeple, you put up lightning conductors, so the lightning conductors are conducting the electricity down to earth all the time, not just when there's a storm. But when there is a storm, those pieces of copper are pretty busy taking all the electrons and electrical charges building up, because the whole point is that it doesn't strike over that spot. So it's not just that it conducts it, because I mean, when it gets struck, I mean, it'll go like everything else. But the beauty of it is that it's releasing that pressure the whole time by being there. It's the electrons are traveling down it all the time. They don't end building up over the cloud over above. They'll build up somewhere else, but not over that spot. So, I mean, I like metaphors. I don't think that we're much different to lightning and static and things building up when we've got a whole lot of pressure in our heads. The way to deal with that is to chat about it. And yes, sometimes it may need medicines, and it obviously needs some advice about diet and lifestyle and worrying about a job or worrying about, that we're not as good as we should be. I mean, I saw a lot of that, because a lot of people who are very sensitive, caring and thoughtful often feel a lot more than people who are a bit more brutal. And I didn't find really, certainly people who are brutal didn't seem to have much of a problem with regard to their sort of view of themselves. They were completely kind of coherently, well, in some cases completely ghastly or psychopathic, which is not saying that I'm blaming them, but I used to say to mums who were terribly very worried about being a bad mother, I'd say, do you think that a bad mother really worries about being a bad mother? I think, we often put ourselves under huge amounts of pressure, again, because of our genetics, our upbringings, what we've learned from other people around us, how much we feel safe with what we share, whether we even share it with ourselves. Because, I mean, if you've got to get on with the life and you haven't got time to get rid of all this sort of space junk, then it'll just carry on building up. There has to come a time when you deal with it. And I think for me, the nice thing and the wonderful thing about sheds is that you can deal with it with other people who've often have the same t-shirt, who are, and there will be people, of course, who will say, oh, that's for the fairies or that's for the sensitive people. You don't want to worry yourself with that, because there's no point in saying to somebody who's worried, well, don't worry, because that's just about that's like sort of taking the lightning conductor off the cathedral spire. You're heading for a strike, and I think you just got to, it works, and it's obvious that it works, because look how the men's sheds movement is growing. Look at what people are doing more and more. Look at what happens when people are released from their fears and their worries about performance, and they get on and start delivering their essential self. It's amazing.